sein Inyan, was Meshayches übergeben, Dafka Dargin and there Shayches the Musik of Amenagit, but after we came, so I think now this BS. Shana Medubra, the sin of the Maila, Adin Ketz, I mean, it's the Inyan of Ilui, Adin Ketz, Fishu Beir in Sof, dealing with the Inyan of the Maila, Adin Ketz, and Er Sosum, the way is in Erin Sof, which is Lifnat Simpson. The mitzvah sin of Erin Sof is Lifnat Simpson. Acharat Simpson is already the Eir, is not the Tachlas Ein Sof. Acharat Simpson is already the Amshach of Erakav, which is, there's already a certain Hagbala in Erakav. Masha'inkin, when you say Ein Sof, the declares Erin Sof, that maybe this says Lifnat Simpson. Lifnat Simpson, when there's no, Hoya Erin Sof Malakal Amtzias, that's the Tachlas Hablik Vol of Alokus Meir, in the Eir Shalifnat Simsum. So if Ashtetz in of Maila Atin Kes within the Eir Ha'Ein Sof, just Tachlis Ha'Ein Sof, within that Inyan Gufa, we're dealing with Inyan of the Maila Atin Kes, so it's Inyan of Ein Sof Betachlis. So Pizat Sarch Lov, and there's a Lashenis that's not Stam Tu Inyanim, but it's Bein Arech. They don't have it in this Hanach. The old Hanach, I think it says here or right before, that it's and Lifnat Simpson Guf. If you the Rebbe says the Inyan of the Maila Adin Ketz is not Stam, but it's two in Yonim Erin Sof. The Maila Adin Ketz is higher than the Mata Adin Tachlis. The Mata Adin Tachlis is together Gili. Masha'ik the Maila Adin Ketz the Inyan Sosam, which is moved to the Legami Inyan Gili. And if you the Rebbe is Madgish Hefresh Gadol B'Neim, here the Rebbe is Madgish in the Sam Hefresh Gadol B'Neim, that the Ile of the Maila Adin Ketz is B'Ein Areich Legavin of the Mata Adin Tachlis. Even though we're dealing with in the Er Gufa. But Hefresh Gadol B'Neim is not, even though we're dealing with one Inyan of Erin Sof, it doesn't mean that the Lamata, the Tachas, the Maila, the Ketz are Be'erech one to another. So you know how much of there's it's Shalei Be'erech. The Lamata, the Tachas is the fact that the Erin Sof, which is Begeder Agili, which is Begeder Amshacha, Begeder Gili, which is Shaykh has to be Nizgal and Shaykh has to Sof Kosof, Binim Shechin Vel. The Maila, the Ketz is Elokus, Elokus is Sos and Venelam, higher than the whole Geder Agili. The Uftu is, because the Eibush there is Ein Sof, he's not defined at all. Therefore, he's kailo side. He's mufshit betachlis. Sai he's sosam betachlis. Sai he's not limited that he has to be dafkan oifen of sosam. And because his ain't sof, he could also be begili. But not that the fact that he could also be begili is a result of the fact that he's ain't sof. Not that he's begili because the helen, because lamayla adin ketz is not such a ili, not such a stimus. The maila adin ketz is a stimus betachlis. But afa bikain. Together with that, there's a Maila Adin Ketz. He's not defined to be dafk in a way of Sasam and Elam Adin Ketz, and he can also be Begili Adin Ketz. So the Maila Adin Ketz is Shalei Be'erech higher than the Lamata Mata Adin Tachlis. Even though we're dealing with both in the way they are in one air, but that's in them Bashtet Haka the head of the air, that he contains within himself two opposite klavas, two Inyan of Shabein Arech. So that the Rebbe's Mad Geshir, or somewhere in the Maamar, that the Maila Gamas Mereta in the Maila has the way it is in air, not in Yechelis, but it's in Niflamayit, which is Shalei Be'erech higher than in Nagili. Pizat Tzarech Lov in Samam Shamam Shalavar B'Maamar Aylu L'Shvezin Yonim Eilu, and he's Mamshach in the Maamar that these Yonim Eirs L'Maila has Mata D'Tachlis and Bishchinas Magiv there Yosher, Magiv there Chezer. Magiv HaKoreh, Magiv HaRoch, and he brings the Moshel of Rav Mashpia Seichel Tamil. There was in Daik here that the Choreh, the Inyan of L'Maila, the Kes, the Kunes Zeir, Ret, and L'Maila, the Kes, the way it is in Eirs of Shalifnat Simpson. And Fidik Rebbe starts saying that these two Inyanim are Makav HaKoreh and Makav HaRochik, so the Rebbe brings a raya from the Moshel that is speaking about the Inyanim Makav HaKoreh and Makav HaRochik in the Eirs Shal Acharat Simpson. So the Choreh, on game reading the two Inyanim the way they are Lifnat Simpson. And then he continues right away, the Inyan Shal Acharat Simpson. This Nikudah that wasn't what the Rebbe was in the Maamar, Tavshin Chavav, the Rebbe didn't make this wasn't that wasn't the Nikudah the Rebbe was bringing out. There, the Rebbe was speaking about the Etzem Inyan of Makav HaKarochik, that they have an Inyan, which is Be'ein Arech Legamri, and Avo Bekein Raz Ashva. So that's Kamereit Nafilu Lifnat. The Rebbe was a madgish, this prat in the Moshel, that the fact that Makav HaKaroch is La'acharat Simpson, that even the Makav HaRochik is La'acharat Simpson. Nish V'gin Dem Tzacheret. So the Maamar then, the Adgosh of Makav HaRochik wasn't that it has a shaykhis to the Makabel. It was more that even though we're dealing with an Ersha Lifnat Simpson and Shalei Be'erech from the Makabel, still that has Ashva. Not that we're dealing with a darg of la'acharat tzimtzum. Has an effect. The Rebbe touches that even Yoni Arab, which are bein arich to the Talmud, hat das hashpafim. There is a Rebbe in al-derech in the Makav HaRochik bayis. Has an effect. The fact that you're connected to the etzem has hashpah in the Geluim. Bayis, the Rebbe about to pick my bayis, and Rabbi Talmud the Rebbe doesn't touch this. What he means in Rabbi Talmud. The Rebbe on the Shiur wants to say that it's al-derech Eliyas Pnei Rav, but the Rebbe doesn't touch this in Rabbi. Of course not. I'm saying but not mitzad the word of Makev Arochik, because Makev Akar the Rebbe is both from a different cheshbon. The Rebbe is not the etzim of Makev Arochik. So here, the whole adgosh of this Maamar is in a way an opposite adgosh of the adgosh of Shloime. I'm not trying to make I'm saying opposites, but you have many more like that. The Makev in the intention of the Rebbe is more going in the kav of being mafli l'mayla mala adin ketz. Here the Rebbe is saying fakert, and this l'mayla mala adin ketz is given the turnus in askeach to Yidin his Havayeh. So that's why there's negate to be madish at the mala mala adin ketz the which is shaykhis to the person. That wasn't that gosh in the Maamar of Tashchavav. That it's the inyan which is nitan. That was being first mafli the mile of the Eitzer. The nach retman then the sinas Eitzer is that she give you a Shiur and Havayeh. So the Rebbe says in this hour the tachlis Eitzer is not that it should stay lifnei tzimtzum, that it should be peiled by a person lamata. And dafke durch them that the Eitzer is given to the person lamata and uses it as his Havayeh vert an ilu in the Eitzer. Yom verbindt sich mit atzmos, so just higher than l'mayla mala adin ketz. But that's all that gush of this Maamar, the fact that the l'mayla mala adin ketz is peil and is nisgal through it. So the Rebbe here the whole arich is here's Gabbis coming to Mechiach that the Makev Arochik that the video speaks about in the Maamar of Tafshin Yud ret pen adarga la'acharat tzimtzum. Also, we're dealing with Eidin Sof, but it's Eidin Sof the way it is la'acharat tzimtzum, not the Eidin Sof the way it is lifnei tzimtzum. That's what it says. What does it say? Then there's the Emek HaSeichel, which is only after Avraham Shana. Still, it's B'chinas Kiru because Meshech HaZman Yavi Yazer. K'mayim Rad Avraham Shana Kuli Kamin Shadat Ederali. But Meshech HaZman Avraham Shana Yavi Yazer Mikachachim. And that's Makev Akar. And there is Neisel is a Yesh Neseichel Shu Omik V'Yeser Shkam Efes Katzeu Einim Izgal Ulo Elam Le'Yobel Digilu. And that's the Makev Akar. So Chure Harikol L'Sin Nashbas HaSeichel and Av the Talmud is the whole in the second prat. In the first prat, in the Makev Akar, which is the Seich, which is Mushmat the Talmud. So that the Makev Akar read when asked la'acharat tzimtzum. There's a Metzias of a Talmud, and the Rav is mitzamtzim the Seich, which should be behesim to the Talmud. That's the Derech Erakab, la'acharat tzimtzum. So that's the la'acharat shara mitzamtzim esichli. Achi yimtza chelik hasvar seichel v'asvara sheichel iskal v'eslam nuchen eser pnimi. You cannot dugm l'zibin nimshal is in the darkest la'acharat tzimtzum. There's already a Metzias of Eilam, and there's the tzimtzum in the Lakus that it should be mislabish and beifim pnimi in the Nevrayim. There's the 4 dark even clearly the tzimtzum of the Rav to the Talmud. There's the Yud Kei Vavke. It's Muvor Barichas and Chassidus that the tzimtzum harav lashpiel the Talmud is Yud Kei Vavke. There is a Maamar of the Rebbe also. They go Yud is the first is Mitzhamsim on the Nekuda, and then there's this the Harchav of the Nekuda, then there's the Hamshach Lamata, then there's the Shetach HaMekabel. But upon him the Hashpah to the Talmud Lepoil is from the dark of Eis Heach Reina the Shemabay. So Mizem move on. So punkt as if we get to the Makev Akar. Ret min la'acharat tzimtzum. Because Makev Akar is what the Rab is mashpia to the Talmud Lepoil. Ret min la'acharat tzimtzum. So Mizem move and that also what he is dealing with Makev Arochik is also madregish la'acharat tzimtzum. Shalilam Reisa even Makev Arochik Makev Akar if Shalema shemin erich legam mizalazeh. Means if we're lifting at tzimtzum is an under sukin in b'chlal. Makev Akar Makev Arochik is both an which is so basically lifting at tzimtzum is all dealing with akol batzmusik. Before there's the musik of Eilim is so Makev Arochik Makev Akar is in one misgeres, one matzah. Shemin erich legam mizalazeh. Kumum legam mizeh shamosh al Makev Akar Makev Arochik milavush ubayis. But the bias nimmt sich am Adam im Alavush. That means that the bias, the Makev Arochik, is Makev Meretach HaSedah Metzias. La'achid is the Metzias of the Adam. Mitzad Ein Etzav Shlifnei Tzimtzum, Mitzad Atzmai, there's no Metzias Ha'elam. The whole Metzias Ha'elam is Chadish Shu Tzimtzum. So we're saying bias is that this Adam, which is wearing a Lavush, he's Mukif at the Makev Arochik. So we're dealing with the Metzias the way it is La'achid Tzimtzum. And there's the way Erdin Sof is Makif in the Matz of La'achid Tzimtzum. Ret mir doch als na dark of lachret sind. Kima shibkhina sam Makev Akar yachs ma digat tatim sid shalos. Hali lei tochen lemas das Makev Akar mit digat shlifna sim so richtig scho in der richtung gam. Kol so richtig lemas shigam kem Makev Akar ma digat lachret sind. So ibaze vet shail and is lachret since we're dealing with there is mitzias elements. And there is a yid mekabel hashpa from the lakus. And within that inyan there's two inyan. There's one hashpa that's in skabel beifin pnimi. And then there's the Ashpa, which is Be'efin Makif, which is Bleit Berichuk. But else, the Elokus is Meir La'acharat Tzimtzum. Not the in of Eidin Sof, the way it is Lifnei Tzimtzum, which there is B'chanish Tadek Gantzim Metzias V'na Mensch. Here we're dealing with the way he's Meir in Shasi Yedam Metzias V'na Mensch. And Elokus is Meir Be'efin Makif to to this mitzvah. So we're dealing not with the Eid itself is ba'atzmos, the Eid itself is makiv la'achret tzimtzum. אם כן, איך שייך כל זה לביר אין דלמיילה עד אין קץ, כפי שהוא באין אינסוף של לפני הצמצום. או, זה מסייג דס. אחינין הוא דהיני בפרק מקד מנסבר, אין דלמיילה עד אין קץ מעד עד אין תחס, ושנמשך וחיידר, אסנם דרך בכל סדר ההשתלשלס. הוא מסי למטה עד אין תחס, למשל. So his mother and the tachlis is that the air, the gilei, spashas in the air, is nimshach in the whole seder shashos biz lamata. And his mother in the b'shaseret lamata at the tachlis, his masber, how the not only that the air is mispashet lamata at the tachlis, but that the air is also pale. I don't know if that's negay here, this word. That the air is pale biz lamata. His ma'arich der barich is that not only that the air itself is mispashet the nimsa lamata, but there's an Indian of bleak vol in all dargas of mitzvahs. Bizin elam has a mamish. There's a hashpa mitzvah the bleak vol of the air. So the air is pale lamata. The fact that air itself is lamata adin tachlis, air is pale and yet the darga mitzvah the shlashlis. Now there's when he speaks of the ma'ila adin ketz, which is the where he speaks in Perek and Sift as well, the chelas hahelen, the kayach hahelen vagvol. Also there he speaks how the Indian hahelen is in all dargas of the shlashlis. There's a tzimtzum arishin. There's a tzimtzum in lower dargis. There's a tzimtzum in biz the lowest tzimtzum. In Elam has a gufa. There's a lamas v'esteirim. So he speaks the in of Ma'ila adin ketz not only the way it is b'shar shalifnat tzimtzum. The way the in of the Ma'ila adin ketz, the keich hagvol of Holocaust. The way it's nimshach in gan seder hashashlos. You have in every darg of mitzias there's the expression or there's the pu'ul of the keich hagvol. So dort the in of the Ma'ila adin ketz the keich hagvol the keich hahelen. The so Punta even when he speaks the pshat of the Maila gets in the Siftas Vav. He speaks the in not only the way it is b'shar shalifnat tzimtzum, but also the way it is in nimshach and elam is al derez. When he speaks the Maila adin ketz the eira sasim v'nelam, so he speaks this inyan the way it is in all dargis. So in all dargis you have, they say the Rebbe brings before. That's the hadgasha, the same makiv hakardiv. In every dargi you have makiv hakardiv. Makav HaKarv is the air which is shaykh and mislavish in Pnimi the Talmud. So you have in every darg of Elamis, there's the Makav HaKarv, there's the air which is mislavish in Pnimis in that Elam. You have the air which is mislavish in Pnimis in Atzilis, the air which is mislavish in Pnimis in Bia, you have the air which is mislavish in Pnimis in Vel. And there's the Makav HaKarv of each darga, and the Makav HaRachik is, he said there's the big bias and Lavush. The bias is not in a different world. In the same world where there's the Adam his Lavush, you have the bias. So in every world you have the makav arachik, which the makav arachik is the l'mayla adin ketz, the way he's nimshach and gan seder shashlis. There's the eir hasas and the way he's nimshach and seder shashlis. That's what there was. Dugmas like the Rebbe said when they get to another mata in tachas before that the Fiyakav didn't only explain the shayrish in. He explained the way this darga is nimshach, and every darga you have in every olam you have the expression of the mata adin tachlis. Sal derech zem the ma'ala adiketz. In every olam you have the ma'ala adiketz. Christians very much the mathematical gildas in sof in shir blikvul mamish the mathematics. You have to see in the lashon of the. I'm saying this is not mamish the. There's that nachadi was written right after the. That's the way it was written right after. Steht die ganze Arichas da was zusammen. Versteht da? Some shinuim. Okay. Well, we'll see what it says there. Sheim mathemata din taus gela gela special this is special in so in should be go mamish at mathemata. Madrige says der rein is Seder Dach. Bidi bi alamas vesteden dribi stashs de bia. Fragt mich über bari bit zum alamas vesteden was ich lese aber habe ich mal kurz gegangen mit dieser Tag. Ich ist war gamin in der mal den Kets. Wir beginnen as helm er should be helm helm ila khir das hat er ragili khos in natzin shay bein so. Doesn't mean all there is there. The kude is that when he speaks in the Siftas Vav, the Inyan of L'mayla Adeket, which is the Keach HaHelen, he speaks it side the way it is in Eretz of Shalifnat Tzimtzum. It says the Tzimtzum which was in Eretz of. So there he speaks in of L'mayla, the Inyan of Helem and Gvul, Lifnat Tzimtzum, and then he speaks in of Helem and Gvul the way it is in Elamis. Biz Lamata Mata. That in every dargah there's Tzimtzum and Ve'elamis. So Al Derech Zeh. I just skipped a couple of lines. That means in Eid Sof where it is. Not in a helem. Not when it's L'mayla. It doesn't mean the fact that he hides himself from the Vrei. In that Tzimtzum. Eid Sof itself contains within itself two inyan. There's the Eid Hasos and the Eid Agoli. So itself atzme, fish hu ba'atzme. This is an itself an gufa. If around the zwei Inyanim from Lamaila Maila the Kesamata at Tachlis, which is the Hanel and Ba'asasum, which is higher than Geder Hagili, and then there's the which is Bechinas Gili. So the Inin Hagili, the fact that Inin Hagili is Lamata Mata, das schon gerät free. The fact that Inin Hagili is Lamata Mata, that he spoke earlier already in the Sifyud Gimel and Dalit, that the Gili is Nimshach v'Cheder is Lamata Mata. But this Inin that the Hanel and Ba'asasum. There's an air which is higher than Geder Gili. And that air is Nimshach L'Hol Seder Dach. This he didn't speak about before. So das retten and there's it. Mash'ink, Mashamad, the Malnikas, and Shigam Batzmus, and Chinas Gila, Shusas Menelam, so the Hemshach Lazeh, Gamba, Beer, Shebeis, and Yan, the Mila, what's the Lashon, the way it's written over there? The Hemshach Lazeh, they have such a word. And then, Abir is about in there. That's the way he says it. Because this, I think the Lashon here is Nish as a. So the Hemshach Lazeh, when he wants to explain the Indian of the Mila, Adin Ketz, so he explains how this Indian is nimshach and is in every single dargah. So that's based on this market. This market of Akarish is begeder gili akapanim. So that's the Indian of the air which is begeder gili. Means in every dargah you have two tnuas in the hamshah and the ashpah of Elokus. We're dealing with the air mitzumtzum. Let's say we're not dealing with now with the areas of kfishu lifnat tzimtzum. We're dealing with let's say seichel eliki the way Simcha Lamata. But there's two tnuis in Ashpas Elikustan Adam Lamat. There's one, the Makav HaKadosh, which is the air which is Begeder Gili, but it's going to take 40 years. But the air Mitzadatzmi is Begeder Gili V'Amshachat Nivra, which that is the same tnu as Geder Gili as the Eretz of as the Lamata Mata Aditachlis. The tnu of Gili, the Indian that the air is taka higher than the Mekabel, but it's Begeder Gili. You have that Indian Lamata Mata. There's an air. There's the Elgi in the way is Begeder Gili in every darya. And then you have the Eliyah in the way he saw some metachlas from the tachta, which is Makavarach. So the two in Yonim, there's two tnuas in the air. There's an air which is Begeder Gili. He's not nimshach to the Mekavi yet Lepoel, but he's Begeder Gili V'Amshacha, and you have the air the way he's not Begeder Gili. He's Eir Asasim. In every darg of Gidei Lekus, in every Eilam, there's these two in Yonim. Not the darg of Eir itself. Let's say the darg of Chachma Datzilis. So Chachma Datzilis being Meir, let's say, Tibya, there's two tnuas in the way Chachma Datzilis comes in his nimshach Tibya. There's one Eifah that is Begeder Gili Akapan. The Eir is Begeder Gili V'Amshach and L'Achre Abraham Shnevet and Nimshach Ben B'Pnimis. And then there's the darg of the Chachmei Lo, which is not Begeder Gili, which is Sasam and Ela, which is B'chla another Suga Metzias Legamri than the Nivra. So these two Tnuas, which are in every single darga, are mushish from the two Pchinis in the Eir Shalifnat Tzimtzum. The Pchina in the Eir, which is an Eir Sasam and Ela, from them Kumtareis the Tnu and Alam Shagas Elikus, which is the Tnu of Hell, the Tnu of Esamos Be'etzim. And the fact that the air is Begeder Gilui, from dort stand in every Seder of Amshacha from Elikus to Nivra, that there's a darga in the Mashpia which is Begeder Gilui. I'm saying is these two tnuas that we find in every Ashpah, there's Makav Arachik, Makav Akar. There's the darga of the Elyon that's Begeder Shaykhas to the Mekabel, which will later be Nimshach Lazeh. There's the Geder of the Elyon, which has no relation to the Mekabel at all. These two tnuas, from Van Shtamen, these two tnuas. That there's in Ashpa, you have the Mashpia the way is Muvdal, and the Mashpia the way is a Shakar to the Mekabel. That's Neveh, because in the Ur there's two Efanim of Ur. There's an Ur which in Yoni is Sasum Be'etzim, bleibt in sich. He's not in a Tnu of Hamshacha V'Giddish M'chutz La'atzmei. And there's an Ur which is Begeder Gili M'chutz La'atzmei. From dort stand in every Darga of Ashpa and Seder Shlas, you have these two Tnus. Even though the Ur that we're dealing with is a lower Darga of Ur. The Rebbe is saying in every Darga of Seder Shlas, you have these two Tnus. The same way he explained the Lamata Mata Aditakas and the Sif before. That you have this in that Tzimtzum, the way it is Lifnat Tzimtzum, the way it is in that Tzilis Tibya, the Parsa is a Tzimtzum, and they between Bya and Elam Hazeh. So al derech zeh of the mile of Eir Hanelam V'Sasum, you have the way it is Mashpia and the whole Seder Shashlis. So there's Tnuas and Seder Shashlis which are based on these two Pchinas in there. We're not saying that necessarily that what's the Makav Arachik, the Eir is of Lifnat Tzimtzum. We're dealing with every Darga of Ashpah. Even we're dealing with Darga Vashpa, there's the Atzilis Legabi Bia. So there's the Pchin of Atzilis, which is Mufshet Legamri from Bia, and there's the Pchin of Atzilis, which is together Amshacha Begili Bia. If man stammt these, in Hashpa we have only these two Efanim with the Yachas of the Talmud with the Rav. If man stammt is these two Efanim of the Yachas of the Talmud with the Rav. That's Nevea, because in the air, there's two Pchinis in the air. There's an air which in Yoni is, that is Nel and Ba'atzme, bleibt in sich. And there's the Ur that in Yoni is the Hamshacha V'Gilu. You have this in Chassidus, a couple of places. This idea that the we're not saying that the shalifnei tzimtzum, the efanim of how the is misyaches to Welt is mashpia on all dargis of Elim B'tach. So there's an Nitzav Guf, and then in every darga of there's the way these two fluids are nimshach. Okay. So what are we holding here? Oh, Zeu Shetchila Mevayir. So Shetchila means we say Shalashlos. But Harim Mevayir Zek Vishuv. So out there is in this mind. But first he says the general point that what's if Shata Ma'ila Ma'alad in Kes Eran Elam B'Sas. The Nachshas the Hipta Mevayir and the Pratia Indian. He begins with the way it is in the Dargis Namuchas, and then he explains it business Eretz Shalif Nesensim. That's what the Rebbe's Masber in this mind. So Mevayir in is Mevayir in Zek Vishuv Eretz Safatzmi. וזהו, שתחיל מבאר המשל משהו עשה רב לתלמיד, לאחר שמצמצם את עצמי, שנעז מה שמסקבל את התלמיד שאם כסר ראשון שעדיין מכנס מקל. אבל במשך הזמן, בהם שונה יובל להם כחוכם, that's מקל הקודם. ויש שתי חשוב מגביס ושלם לבוא דיגדי ממש. שזהו המשל, למטה, כפי שנראה שבשת ושלוש, אחר כך מסלבר המשל למטה, כפי שהוא בעין סוף עצמי לפני הצמצום, and there it brings the משל בנגיע לשכל הרב, כפי שמסקל משחקם לעצמי ועמק ענייניס. It's interesting, because the Rebbe didn't chase this Hadgosha in the Maamar before. Here the Rebbe is learning that the second mashal is a mashal for a different inyan. There is the Eretz L'mayla and the Kes, the way it is L'achrat Tzimtzum, and have them bring to the mashal of the Rab Mashpia Seichel the Talmud, and then there's the Seichel which is not the Geder Ashpa altogether, and then he speaks the mashal of the Mashpia Mischakim Ba'atzmei, and that's a mashal for the inyan Hahelim the way it is different, for the Eretz Asasim the way it is different at Tzimtzum. In Maamar touching Avav, the Rebbe doesn't touch it that way. The Rebbe touches that first the Rebbe explains Makav Arachik, and then the Rebbe says not to explain. Makav Arachik just brings out the Ein Arech of the Mekabel to the Eir. Then he wants to explain not only the Ein Arech, but that the Eir, that it's an Inyan Sasa, that it's an Inyan that's higher than Gili. To explain the Prat that's Inyan of higher than Gili, for them bring to the Mashal of the Rav Mashpiyah, when the Rav is being Mischakim B'Seichel Ba'atzmi. The Rebbe touches this the fact that the Fidigar brings the Mashal of when the Mashpiyah is Mischakim and the Seichel Ba'atzmi is a mashal to explain that the Inyan Ba'atzmi is Inyan Sasa. Makav Arachik just brings out the mashal that he brought, just brings out the Ein Arech of the Mekabel from the Inyan, but not that it's an Inyan which is Nelam Ba'atzmi, was bleibt in sich. Of them bring to the mashal from there, but here the Rebbe explains that it's a mishalim for two different Inyan. The mashal that he brings from the Rav Mashpiyah Seichel HaTalmud and the Seichel Sasum, that's for the Inyan of the Malak as the way it's L'achrat Tzimtzum. And the mashal that he brings of the Rav, which is Mischakim Ba'atzmi in the Seichel, that's the mashal for the Inyan of the Malak as the way it is L'achrat Tzimtzum. So Glav Dafka is not that the Rebbe is saying a different beer in the Maamar, so I think it's not necessarily the which that is before he's mitzamtzim himself. The way the Rav is ba'atzmi. And the nimshal, that's the way the Rav is, and of course the way it is ba'atzmus, lifnei. And the Zed Gufa, there is a type of say askalav yitzchakmus that's going to be shaychel agili. That's what it brings me. But in the mamash level, the Rav is learning. Now, in the way the Rav is moved the lagamri from the Talmud, learn fazich. And the Rav is bein arech to the Talmud. His limud is shalei be'erech higher than the Seichel Talmud. But in that gufa, you have the way the Rav is learning a Seichel, which is Seichel, it's Azasert which is Begeder Amshacha. And Saf kol Saf, it's going to be Nimshach, Begili to the Mekabel. And you have when the Rav is Mischakim and a Seichel, which is not Begeder Gili. Do it higher than Gedera Gili. Yeah. If it's a gufish mashgam gam askol b'schak masachadosha yovim zeves k'sil the gili b'mekabel. Moving the fierach. But yesh mashal maskal b'sichel amukim yeser shein mishachom lekabel klal. There inyan which is sostum be'etzem mitzvah klolus muhosa ere betruno des amos. That it's nelem. It's an er which inyani is la leser l'skalo batzmus. So that's that's a nimshal for lifnei tzimtzum that there's an er which is the geder gili even though it's shalei be'erech to the mekabel. And then there's the air, which is not the Geder Gili. In Yoni is the Alus in the Etzem. She'er Nivdal is Alam Batzmus. Okay. This is Sifei, what's how do you, we're going to read it, it's not
does having the mashal of the Rav with the Talmud add anything in the second mashal?
No, the Rebbe is for two different dargis. The second mashal of the Rab being maskal ba'atzmai. So that's two separate inyanim. So the first mashal, the mashal of the Rab Mashpia Seichel Talmida is to explain Makavarot Kevachavakarah the way there's Lachar Tzimtzum. Then he brings another mashal to explain the two inyanim Lifnat Tzimtzum. The mashal of the Rab being Mischak and Ba'atzmai, and there's two ifanim, that's a mashal for the two inyanim Lifnat Tzimtzum.
So the Friedrich Rebbe brings that it's in the Arisat itself, which is the second mashal.
Right.
Before explaining what it is itself.
Because so the Rebbe's patching here is, first he speaks the general idea, that there's an error which is Inyan Stimus. When he starts explaining it the Pratius, he starts up Lamat Al. First he explains the two Inyan the way they are La'achar Tzimtzum, and then he builds up to Lifnat Tzimtzum. That's the way the Rebbe is being revered here. I'm saying the Pashas of the Sif, in the Sif Zayin, it's not mashma that he's coming to explain two different dargis. He's coming to explain the Inyan that he spoke before. That's why the Rebbe touched up Shchavot. Not here. The Rebbe is saying that it's two different dargis. So he's being merames here that the same way he already spoke these inyanim. When he spoke Lamala Mala Deketz, he always spoke about it the way it is in all Seder Dach. So he doesn't have to explain that he's going to explain the inyanim the way they are in all dargis. Hilachatchila brings the mashal that she verstehen that there's the inyanim the way the lachas is inyanim the way they are lifnei tzimtzum.
So all of the Yorim from Basi Agami, the way the two makkos that interact with the Talmud are still true in the higher way as well.
What do you mean the higher way? The Rebbe spoke the
the fact that we say
bias.
the Makkah Parach, the Poil is still Poil on the Talmud, yeah?
Right.
Because the Poil has to be a Yah.
So you're saying
is that true in this Maamar? In other words, is that still going to be, because the happening of this Maamar to say that it's
I'm saying the Poil, the Rebbe says a word in Tashchavot, it's not Izgetaish, that when he speaks about the Makkah Be'etzem, when he speaks to the higher Darga, when he spoke before Makkah Barachik Raiva the Chor Raivin, there's epis ayachas to the Mekabel.
Right.
It's not so izgetash, but the pearl is such a word over there. But the Rebbe doesn't say that it's la'achar tzimtzum. When you speak about the nitzavsh lifnei tzimtzum, there's anashir when you say even what I'm saying is there's one word you say it's air which is nani nelam asasam, but there's a pool of mitzad that air. That air is pearl. The fact that it's pearl doesn't express ultimately the ili of the air. Not necessarily that we're dealing with a lower darga the way it is la'achar tzimtzum. That wasn't Eizketash and Maamar Chavav that the Makif Harachik is a lower darga than the Makif Be'etzem, a totally different darga. Means there's Biurim, the Inyan Gili is pale in a way of Gili. Helen is pale by Ifenela. Says in order to bring out that flow of the Helen, it's not. There's a deeper aspect in the Helen that is higher than the pool altogether. Lav Dafket's in a different darga. That wasn't Eizketash upon him in the Maamar Chavav. Here the Rebbe is saying that Makif Barachik is a lower darga. Is that what I'm saying is, does that mean that when the Rebbe speaks to the Maamar Kut Torah about Raiva, the Chor Raivin, it's Dafka La'achar Tzimtzum? Lopel speaks to La'achar Tzimtzum. He speaks with their Atik and Arich. The Rebbe is speaking there. The Makif Barachik that he speaks about the Maamar Kut Torah, that the Rebbe brings in the he's speaking there when he gets to Atik and Arich. But that wasn't the Adgasha that it's a lower darga. The Adgasha was that you have in Yonim which are pale by Finsasa. That was with the Rebbe's Masber in the Maamar Chavav. Even the Indian of being Malbush Seichel and Lebushim is also not the ultimate Sasim. Ultimate Sasim is the last thing that he brings. But it's not Ezgedesh, there's three different targets. I'm saying, it's can say that it's Mechur, that it's different. That's. What do you mean?
What was the shackles to?
The Pashtas, we're saying the way it's in Bas Lagani Chavav?
No, wait here. Once you say that every single guy
no, he's saying, what I'm saying, he teaches a new teach in the Matai Talas Amala, I guess. The air which is begeder gili and the air which is higher than geder gili. Yeah, so what's the Matamatal, as we explained before, was in the Sifim before. The air is nimshach l'payel l'matamata. Here he has the matamata in Tachlis, the air which is begeder gili, which is the shadish of the matamata in Tachlis. The air which is begeder gili. He's not nimshach l'payel yet to the mekabel. He's begeder gili. So this Indian of air which is begeder gili, in every darga you have these two inyan. What does Makav HaKarev mean? Even though the Talmud didn't understand the Lepoil, it's within his world.
Why is Makav HaKarev different?
Because Makav HaKarev is B'chal Navigator, the Seichel HaTalmud. He'll never get it. Why the Matamata? Makav HaKarev has no Shaykhs. What do you mean? Yeah, but it's Seichel and Ephraim, he means the Havayeh, Seichel and Liki, the Seichel and Ephraim. Seichel Laki doesn't exist, the Seichel and Ephraim. it's not within our world of existence. That seichos is nishke mitzis. So that's al derech sasam be'etzem. It's not just bein arech that it's not that it's a little bit you can get the ultimate depth you can't get. Legabe the nivraim seichol ki doesn't exist. He's nelam ba'atzme legabe nivraim, and you have a dark which is beget gili. Mamsh remember in the Gila Sichlam HaMukim Shinim Shechalam B'Kabel Klal Chnes Makev HaRochi Kshaskolis Elu. So here, what's they speaking about? They're speaking about Lifnei Tzimtzum. According to the beer before, so what's that of the Achar Tzimtzum? What is Mamsh remember Sichlam HaMukim Shinim Shechalam B'Kabel Klal Chnes Makev HaRochi? So it means also the darga. What's the lashon over there? No, this is a new Indian.
Well, both. If he brings Priyater in both dargahs, no? He doesn't bring the...
It's before he mentions the mashal of the Rab, which is Mischak and Batzim.
That's the part that Friedrich doesn't go back there.
No. That's Nishach through the Lushim HaMalim.
Or if the Mishal doesn't mention the word of Mishal.
Doesn't bring it again. But I'm saying, Nechsidus state that through Mishalim and Sipurim, Mishalim and Sipurim, the Sipurim Atera and Moshesh in the area which is Lifnei Tzimtzum.
Yeah.
State is in Mefurish.
From that mountain.
But everybody's in your Makav HaRachim.
That comes from that mountain.
Yeah, but you're saying, but I'm saying, Lav Davka, the Rebbe is saying here, when you say the Makav HaRachim is Achar Tzimtzum, not that it's the Tnuah that there's the Eliyah the way he is Batzmusum. That tnu is mushish from the fact that you have an error which is down the bottom. It's not that it's the same error. Okay, yesh layim is it. Manch b'amir nigel sichlam bokim shenim shechem l'makabel klal b'chinas makav HaRach yesh askolis ila b'yim adi l'bush ma'alim bastir. Huh? Elikein is that? Which is that? It says mamash b'hemshech to what?
Same. So it's not the
dag of Lifnei Tzimtzum. So there is used Lashon Makav HaRach.
Maybe it doesn't mean that
the unique way is Misharshe. It's good that the Lashon Makav HaRach remember in Nile and Nikar Shesh Chacham. This time understand. But Kaplan, what's this part of the Maamar? That this sichlam are nimshach through levushim hamalim mastir, and it brings two digmais when he speaks about sichlim, which are shalei be'erech to the makabel. So it's nimshach through mishalim and through riddles. Shebehem are any nirev and nikar sheshim chacham v'seichel, and then he speaks in the nimshal v'chein b'sipurim ma'ases shebetayra. So mishalim v'chidus he brings for chachma shleima me'az yetzi masiv, which that's a riddle. It's a middle. But then he brings, that's a riddle from Shimshon, no? The me'az yetzi masiv. But then he brings, he put a message with Sheshim and say this, Veraz and Elah and Harbi Yeshim Pibit Dinatir. Avl Eni Nikar Klal. Which that's a matter, so I say, Sasam Eni the Gidar Akad Hestem Rebbe. Lahoyer, Afa Pisha Erba, the Lugush Mamali Mastirim, Lisa Sasam Be'etzim, becomes, the first Rebbe says, is Madregis. Kfish Mesirim in Amshalom Shalfam Midim Kama Shalom. Same way we see Beneget, not Beneget to be Mamshal the Inyan to a lower Darga. In the same Darga Gufa, where we find that there's Kama Shalom on one Inyan. V'at kishenemer b'shleimei davar shleish lof and mashal. Af shluchor kimin shvelav achein nusasem be'etzem. And kein mani teis v'ad ribe ha'mishalim. K'meishu b'sipurei ha'teirash af sh'aseit shva musasem kol kem yeshnem kama sipurei b'teir. Chossi v'po v'archov v'zabir b'ribi pratim. The Rebbe says in the Maamar, so it can zayin akrum esvara. As Allah. So it can be akrum esvara to say that since in nusasem be'etzem, so how is it, and you're being mamshech through inichitzayin, the levush has no shaykhs to the Indian, so how's shaykh to say dargis? If you're expressing an Indian, you're being explaining an Indian through beer. You're being malbish a seichel, a Indian in biyurim. So you could have kam v'kam asbaras, or to explain it lower, explain it better. This part of the Indian. But here, the whole nakud of the mashal is that since it's an Indian, which is a bahalkan Indian sasum, the only way to be malbish it is through inyanim chitzeniim legami. So inyanim chitzeniim legami. So what's the nimsh? The mashal weistach nicht of the nimsh. So manaf keminah dargis. So the Rebbe says, I mean, there's in Ameretek and in Yonim Stumim Gufa, there's a Seder how they're Nimshach. I don't know, we have to explain what the Seder is, but the same way in Yonim of Gili. So there's a Nimshach, a Seder Vadraga, there's the way it's Nimshach Omay Lamata, in one Darga Gufa that is Misparet in Protein. So you have also when you get the Sichlam Hastumim, have the same concept of Eirech, Reichav, and Emek, but the way they are world of Sasim. So the Gven HaKrumis var that maybe Azal Chasart Levushim, so there's not Shaykhin of Seder Vadrag or Indian of the Kama Prata. But there is, whatever there was not Masber, what the Havana is. Just the same way Benegay to be Mamshech a Seichel Goli Tamekab. So there's Kama v'Kama Dargis to be Mamshech a Seichel Goli. A Seichel Sasim is Eirech Tafashit in the Dargis. In the Eretz Sasum, there's different Dargis in the Mekabel, there's different Efanim, how to express this Indian, which is higher than Gili to the Mekabel. So there's Kama Efanim, Kama Pratam, and the same in Yonim you have in being Mashpia, in Goli, you have in being Mashpia, in Elam. That's the Nekuda the Rebbe says here. It says, the same way you find when you get to Sipurim, there's Kama Sipurim, and every story has many Pratam. So Gam Binyan Am Shal Deriva Am Shalom, Rishachin Lamata B'Yesa. In other words, they ever say the same way you find there's in Seichel there's Eirech, Reichav, and Emek. So there's being Mamshech the Seichel to a lower Eilam. That's Eirech. And then there's Reichav in that Eilam Gufa to be inspired and a Ribi Pratim. To elaborate and to have it more more Eizgetouched. So you have this, and that's why even in the Seichel Sasim you have these two Ifanim. The Raya is Sipur HaTeira, you don't there's Kama v'Kama Sipurim. There's Kama Sichlim in each Sipur. There's different Pratim in each Sipur. So and that's the way the Indian is nimshach. Baruch So there is when they get to the Indian of Hamshach Lamata Mata. Kedu B'Inei B'Havayeh Daber Shleishes Lof HaMoshel Shloime B'Shloime all of an Emer Havayeh Nas Chacham B'Shloime, which is the Mechutz Chacham the Erin Sof is higher than the Shtashlus. The Poyle came through Seder Shtashlus, and every Hamshachet to a lower Welt is through a Moshel until he's V'Daber Elaitzim. So there's different dargers in the Shtashlus. And even though we're dealing with the Indian Sasum, but there's the way the Indian Sasum is Simshach to Bria, the way Simshach to Yitzira, the way Simshach to Asiyah, through different stories. In every Darga, there's an Indian Chitzoni in that Darga. So I don't know in R22 here. I don't know the word, the Lashon Emek Shederton. But, But I'm saying the same way you see in one Elam. So there's different Sipurim. So Derech being Mamshechit from one Elam to the next Elam, there's also Kama. That's the Shleishes Lof HaMoshel. Being Mamshechit Mamayla Lamata. Okay.
So you could say the word of the 3,000 Shalom that each one will bring you to
lower Darga. Yeah.
Last month, I remember you said you negated that.
I didn't get it. The Rebbe there doesn't bring that.
Okay.
The Rebbe there doesn't bring it. And I said the Rebbe is going to speak on the next time. I'm saying is the story in Bria, it's an under Meisev, it's a put out the way they are in Elam Hazah. I don't know exactly what it is, but also there it's in the Chitzeni Legamri. But it's the way it is in that Elam.
What's what I'm saying? It's enough commitment what's going to be the Maisa if it's Sasim Be'etzem.
But you're being Mamshach this Sasim Be'etzem to an Elam. You're not, it's the Sasim Be'etzem, it's Nimshach and Mislabish to the Mekabel. So in Chitzeni Legamri, which is not made on the Indian, but it's in Chitzeni which is going to connect the Indian to this Mekabel, and in Chitzeni which is going to connect the Indian to a higher Mekabel. There's in being Mashpia this Seichel Sasim to Mekabel. It's not just I'm saying the same way in Seichel Goli. There's different Efana being Mashpia the Seichel to Keli. There's being Mashpia the Seichel Sasim. Also different levels of Mekabel. Saying I'm saying the same way you understand B'Pashtus. The story of Yosef and the Shevat and the way they are in Elam Hazah. Their Maisa doesn't exist in Elam Yitzira. Elam Yitzira is Elam Ruchni. So there, for the Seichel Sasim, there's another cert Levush. There's the way the story is Beruchni Sainyan. And there's the way the story is in Atzilis, the way it's in higher Elamis. And each Elam, so there's in Yanim of Bir Vehez Beral Derech Hamshach of Elam of Gilei Velukus, and there's in Yanim of Levushim in every Elam. You have Hechalis of an Elam. So the Hechalis are the Darga Chitzainis, which is there is Nizgala, the Eir Asasim. Every Darga in his Darga. We're saying this Hadam Makabel. It sounds like the Hadgosh over here is that since we're dealing with Hashpa, we're dealing with the way the Seichel is Nimshach, so there's Dargis. It's a Seder Hashpa. It's not just even though it's in Atzmi, but it's in the Mashpa. Yishleim. Yishleisel Daik B'Lashon HaMaamar Shv'Tchilas in the case of K'mei Shalom V'Achidus. He speaks about the Seichel Sasum and the that he get the Shloime Alech B'Shalom V'Achidus. Hemshcha Inyan, he's masker like in Amsham, but in Achidus. Where's the Hemshech when he speaks about? He says it doesn't touch is K'mei Mishalom v'Chidus, K'mei Mishlo Shloime, and then Sipurei HaTorah b'Shalom. So it means B'Shalom. Even when he speaks about this Seichel Shloime, he doesn't mention the word Chidus. He mentions B'Shalom. Only the mashal he mentions Chidus. As he comes. But the Pelish Tet Chidus Mefurish also the Gabi. I'm saying Chachma Shloime there was Chidus there. Me'az Yetzi Masuk is a riddle, not a mashal. Huh?
That's not Shloime. You say that's Torah.
Also Torah. It says Mefurish that in Torah is Mishalom v'Chidus. Here there was Madgish something else. So Hemshech Masker Akin Mishalom Lina Chidus. Heck the Mayedu in the Gidla Dik Duar Sein Sein Shlo Adnar Zagamak Val Dik Kalosh. And that's when you get writing. But that's when you get the dibur. The Alter Rebbe was medayik in his lashon. Admon say you loy hayu makpid al diyik haloshon. But the Gila tzam tzedek v'ravim shel ha'achrav le'shamayit. Kenir shayib zechiluk izman. Amol when they said that Torah was the Eisis were meduyik, and Amol the Eisis were not necessarily meduyik, whatever that means. Omram Yidua, that the Rebbe said in the Friedrich Rebbe, Yimedaikim shtiya kol teva amachayim. Frat, that's even the dibur. Frat the Maamar sheba bekam beksavu betfus. So it became bevadish gam pratza shebetchila niska mishalom v'chid hak niska rak mishalom hu b'diuk. So Yuvan behek t'man chiduk shem mishalom v'chid is sha'amoshel im yesed davar zar legabe animshol v'dari kol inyonu yilavar lahazbers ha'seichel. Means a mashal is not Seiser Seichel. A story. Whether it's even you say the musik the pashtus of a mashal. It's that's the lashon there. A mashal calling Yon is levair the Seichel. Steht das in dort? Calling Yon levair the husband. The Rebbe spoke before the mashal as inich yitzayni legamri. Says such a lashon there? Huh? Dover Zor, but it's not Seiser to say. Oh, that's the Lashon that says. Shabbos, maybe this Lashon Nine base. But what's Negeh here, the Rebbe is speaking Mishalom, not Mishalom that explain the Nimshal. Mashal as a Labush Chitzeni Legami, but it's not Seiser. It's a story. A story is not a stira to the Seichel. A riddle doesn't make sense. The part of a riddle is that you say something which has no meaning, or that the Alpanov, it doesn't make sense, the riddle. So it's two opposites. From something harsh comes out as this is out. So the riddle is that you may say a sentence which is seiser, which doesn't make sense, which doesn't have igoyim, doesn't make sense. So it's seiser the Indian Asik. So Mashiach Chidim K'mevecho Yitzim Meicho U'Meyaz Yitzim Mosu Karizolelek Dover Zar Me'asich. Was the initiating moving Masech, Hepech Asech, which is a deeper hell. So the Zeo should tell us in this commotion with Chidis Kim and she's going to read the Seder Lamata Mata B'Yes Adigim Kavosat Meis. She'er Lekiyu V'Tachas Hell. Kamin Achidis Hepech Asech. The Hemshech in Masker Rak Mishalom V'Lei Chidis Kim Shem Duber Gam Yedis Sipuri Ma'aseh Shevet Teira but Teira Shaykh in Achidis Shurin Haf. You have the Kavi the Dag of Erin Tzaf Hasasim. The way is nimshach in Yonim, which are the Goli Astiritalus. But that's not Torah. Here, the Adgosh of Chida is that it's Seiser. In Torah, you have no Yonim, which are Stiritalus. Even a person can make a mistake, but every word in Torah is a Keli Talakus Begoli. Every Inyan in Torah is a Keli Talakus. There's no Inyan which is a Stir. You have in Yonim that Alakus is in Slavish, in Yonim which Bengali are Stiris Talakus. In Torah there's no Inyan which is a Seiser Talakus. Kol HaTorah Kuli Shmezer Shakadish Baruch. Shigam Kashem Duru V'Torah This in Yonim Built Tzuyim is mentioned that Avidah Zareh, Baal, Tzafein, Pari Hikriv, Gam in Yonim Elik Kishim V'Torah Shmezer Shakadish Baruch. It's always it's the way Elokus comes in these Inyanim. It's Nirgash Begali that it's Elokus coming in these Inyanim. Masha'inkin, an Inyan of Elokus being Nimshach and a Mitzvah, which is a Seiser, that's only the way Elokus comes in Velt. In Velt, there's Inyanim which their Mitzvah Begali is a Stirit Elokus.
would be the answer to what you said about Chida. Chida relates to parents that can't be told the cause.
Right, you know, Chassidus said that, but here there is not Chida that it's Seiser. That it's a Seiser Telikus. Means, the Mashaikin in Torah, there's no inyanim which are a stira to the, right, but it's inyanim Zarim, but not inyanim which are, it's the Elikus comes in Zar. It's not, in Torah you don't have Levushim, in Torah you don't have inyanim which are Begoli Hepech Elikus. So you say, it says in Torah, Nasa Adam, so there's Nisinas Makam Lites. But Nasa Adam is Himlech Ve'Bezin, in Yonim and Torah is not even of Ribu. A mensch was lent is Kamachan Atos, but the Yonim and Torah is all in Yonim of which are not Hepech Halakus. Masha'inkin in Welt, there's none of Hepech Halakus. And there's the way the air is from the Medin Yonim. The Rebbe brought before the Marshal of the Baal Shem Tov, that you have even through Inyan Ya'elam, you can be Megal Elikus. So that's the Eira Sas and the Yisim Shech Inyan Elikus. Kiran Hashalom Bavad. So Gamash Aten Nikim Mishalak Admeni, Marshal Dafki. That's why the Lashon is Teir is Mishalak Admeni. It's interesting because there's a Sikha there is Mazur Fakir. That Marshal is a bigger Helam than Chida. And Teir is called Mishalak Admeni because the Etzim of Teir is Nizbata, Dafki Dim Mahapecha, even a Tzir, which is not a Keli to Teir.
Why is Chida?
Because a chida, since the chida doesn't make sense, you right away know that it's hinting to something. I'm shaking a marshal that could be a nice story. You don't see that it's a lavush for any different advasha than it. So that's second chilik zayin. Remember the nebis albayt. Messiah ben Maamar.
The Aces purpose when people do.
Right. So you see the gully that it's in yon.
What the chida, Shalom.
That's settled. Please, I don't know.
That's a shot. We can
Chidas. No, that's a pshat. Shloime, is that pshat? Okay. Saying by Maamar, the Rebbe spoke in the later years. I don't know if that's also from them. But if you're already saying as Adrush, so the Rebbe spoke in the later years a lot from the Chelik Haremes Shevat. Riboy from Sichas a riboy of Ramazim in the midst of the years, and the not in Yonam Begoli of
beer.
The Goli a lot, but a riboy of Chelik Haremes Shevat that was more than years earlier. Can say Echelum if the Zakshan as a Indian, you can say that that's the. Saying by Maamar, she'inin didn't sell Maala Maala in Ketz. Shekoyel etzem mission we get the Gidivam Shach Klal Be'elam is Elam Salam Skalam Batzmus. This is an important point also. So this air which is Nyan Elam Besasim is no Shaychas to Elam. Adarab it's an air which is Niskalo Batzmus. Pchina Madrig is Uenekas B'Shem Eitz. Shem Sheitzer Sasam Elam in Korea came Pchinas Atzmus Sasam Manela. The last thing the Rebbe says is that. I don't see it over here, the Lashon, but the way I looked in the old Hanacha, if I remember correctly, the word that the Rebbe says at the end is that even the Ermis said that's Sasa. But Dafka, when it's piled, when it's nimshach to the Chayal, to the Anshe HaMocham, and they use it out in the Aveda being an Atzeach Managid, that's deeper than the Ini, the way it is Besharsha. The way it's nimshach to the Chayal, then it's for mitzvah with Atzmus. And Dafki here is the Nempman Atzmus. Huh? And Dafki here Nempman Atzmus. Okay, sure. Huh? Steht das Aloschen? For what reason, I don't understand why they took it out of here. But why did they take out this pattern?
It feels better this way.
Steht bechamish. No, he says Shem Sheitz says when came Chinas Atzmus so Sasam Manela. But the Rebbe says no, the Dafka, the way the Eitzer is Lamata, the Eitzer mitzad Atzmi to the figure is the air which is in Yoni Stimus, higher than Gilu. Dafka, when the Eitzer is nimshach to the Anshe HaMocham, and they use it out, Dafka done and Atzmus. Das steht dort in Zimish. But what's the Lekeach? Da Aveda bin Sach Namen Agit. Also, ich verstanden. Okay. Kimisch ist ganz schön das ist ein Rekord von Sachen der Erzählung nein muss kurz nicht Mathematik haben muss nicht sagen so nein weil diese von Gamma die schon gerade kann ich mal eine Kette so close means I there's a plan that also the matters on this guy and with them nennt man the fact that even the matter you have the matter I think it's with them nennt man that's higher than the dark of steams anyway Huh? Because the Indian of L'mayla Ma'adiketz Mitzad Atzma is also, so to speak, has a certain definition. It's the way it is sasum. The ultimate Shloime says that this Eir HaSasum is payal even in a darga where there's a menagid and you break the menagid. Dafka, the fact that it's payal in Makim Namach B'Yeser, that's even a higher Ilui. What do you mean what? Why is it that when the Eir is not something funny? There's kind of beauty, but in the Rebbe's, it's just the basic thing. And the shayrish of the being mahapich the cheshach ha'elam telikus, that's mushish in atzmos, not air which is in anistimus. So when the air is, when a yid uses this air to be menatzeach to carry out the kavanah of lashas leizad Rebbe Tachleinim, so then he carries out the kavanah of atzmos, which is higher than this. That's the kavanah, but the Rebbe's mavar also the word that being pale Rebbe Tachleinim, that brings out a deeper ili in alakus than the etzem inyan of the air being sasim. The fact that the yid uses the air sasim to be mevatal the menagid, that brings out a deeper head agdar in alakus, which is the bleakful of atzmos, higher than the bleakful of the air sasim. Yeah, the Rebbe it's explained in other places here, but this is what it seems like is the mechub.
What does that mean that you use the eras sasim to be menatzeh the Muhammad?
A yid, what does it mean the pale amish? A yid learns a little chassidus, that's Shiurim and hagech chassidus, whatever that. I don't, there's bleak volt to any of these. I'm just saying the simple. And with b'kayach that a yid has his iskashus tolukus is in such a deep way that he's not affected by inyan halam sustainu avilam hazeh, and he overcomes them, and he even makes the place that he goes, which is hepech halukus, he makes it a dir leizvar, whatever the. So that he's using a takeif from an air which is higher than gilui, an air which is begilui, so wouldn't be able to handle the cheshachayim. The fact that a yid could able to believe in the Eibishter and to stay a Ehrlich Yid even with all the lemmas v'esteirim is dafka with Eirach Sidus. And that's Tameh Chaim Zochu she'nein zin nishim zgal gam b'seis man ha'golus. That means shezeu inin is galus. Onkommen zu drashes. Da steht da so. Shezeu inin is galus pnimius ha'teira. Means that Emil is Galo Oslevet is Galo Fern, was not aufgetan through being Mamshich and through using the Eiches, we will not say the Muhammad. Or being as Galo Oslevet. Tameh Chaim Zochu, me ein ze nimshich mas Galo gam b'seis man ha'golus. That's the end of his Galus Primus ha'teira b'teres achsidus and teres achrim. K'disa bezer b'shis mishnin l'shis Yisah and of the 6,000th year, the Tov Reish, Hey Allah from Tov Reish, Yispaschu Tari the Chochmas Le'elu. Tov Reish is already finished, the 600th year, the year Tov Kuf. Tari Chochmas Le'elu, Mabur the Chochmas Le'sata.
Tov Reish.
Huh?
Tov Reish.
Yeah, but it's Hey Allah from 600. But why is there being that Shnas Nachas already with the what's the state in the Sech of Chilik Tezvav?
It doesn't remember whether about the terror was talking about the Chesed.
There he brings it. I don't know. Nifkol, but the Yamat Schon gave me the gili of Pnimius HaTeira. Calls it like Me'ena Gil Gil Asad Lavi. Yikra Gil Ma'ama Kesel Gam Lamata Mata in Tachlis Yil Asad Lavi because Hoy Ba'al Ba'al Galarz V'Yeh Chodesh Me'echad Shekaya La Gili V'Yespash Ha'Se'er Echad Shema is the gili, and Havayeh Chodesh Me'echad will be the gili, the Yichud of the Mailand Lamata. So that's another nukud here. But Satan's Gala Vern the Shleimus of Nitzach Namachov is Gala Atzmos, which then we'll see the Kavanah of Lamata and the Kavanah of Lamayla is all in order for it to be the Shleimus Kavanah of the Rebbe Tachleinim.